Well, to discuss these developments, we're now joined by political analyst Sandile Swana. Sandile, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. So, Gwede Mantashe says that Jacob Zuma standing for national chairperson is the biggest joke of the year. What does it tell us, though, about the state of affairs?
Yeah, I think that in terms of ANC politics, there are many who would have loved to say Zuma and perhaps even the RT forces are no longer in play. And Zuma just wants for his part to announce that Zuma as an entity is still in the game and can mobilize support around in many cases. And in fact, even those who are coming into power may have to consider what type of thing they can do for Zuma and his cases. So Zuma is there, the RT forces are in the game, the ANC still remains divided. I think that is where we are for now.
Why do you think Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma didn't quite make the cut in KZN?
I think that if you look at the people that have emerged in the provincial election, even in the previous case, but certainly in this case, I think there's a sense in KZN, I think more than elsewhere, where a new generation is definitely taking over. Whether it's a new generation in thinking, but in terms of age, chronological age, a new generation is taking over. And it's interesting that even Gwede Mantashe, who is perhaps a spent force in terms of age himself, age and health perhaps himself, then says Zuma at 81 is a joke and mentions the question of age, which is a big topic in the ANC right now. So I think Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma is, the branches have not elected her. It's probably a sign that they think she's over the hill.
We'll talk about the others, but is Paul Mashatile starting to gain some momentum, do you think?
Yeah, I think Paul is gaining momentum. And obviously, as people like Paul emerge, the name of Didi Mabuza tends to be forgotten. But this was his partner for many years in this unity card, if you like. There's a unity card that was played even in 2017. And Paul and Didi rose on that card. But it looks like now Paul is gaining the upper hand.
So what of Dr. Zweli Mkhize? Legal problems to one side, let's assume they disappear in time. Is he a very serious candidate across the nation?
Well, you may well find, Zweli Mkhize has been prominent for a very long time. Those for a long time actually in the Congress movement, even those went to university with him, so which is quite a long while back. So I think if there is a person who can be a national figure from KZN, Zweli Mkhize would have to be that national figure among others, but certainly yes, it does have national stature without a doubt.
Where does all of this leave Cyril Ramaphosa now that the dices have been thrown in, essentially?
I think that for now, what we can say is that there is a give and take that has got to happen because all the provinces and the individual politicians within the provinces want something. So first of all, where this puts Cyril is a case where he may not have the slate that he would have preferred to have as people jockey for position. And in the process, if he's not careful, his own position might be jeopardized. It could be that to say, look, if you give up other positions, we may not bother you much with the presidency of the ANC. And Cyril Ramaphosa, being what you might even call an opportunist that he is, he could even go for that.
Is there a dark horse, do you think, that might come through in the top six? Some people might have been surprised with Didi Mabuza ending up as deputy at the last National Elective Conference. Could there be somebody that we're not seeing, that we're not talking about, that might come through?
I think there's no doubt. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I think it's a very complex election. First of all, I think we don't really know what the final slate from, or whatever you want to call it, the list from KZN might look like. It's interesting that they've roped in Limpopo province. There are certain topics that they agreed with, whilst they agreed with on the step aside resolution to get rid of it, etc., etc. So the positions in these provinces, they might support Cyril on one thing, but they might not support his slate. So it makes the whole thing very fluid, because the provinces, like now in the Eastern Cape, they've got Mashatile and so on. So there is a lot of shifting alliances that make it very difficult to know who's who in the zoo, and whether the players, the names that are on paper, are really now the names that we need to be watching out for.
This step aside story, has that now become a central theme? And it's interesting that Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma spoke so pointedly about the issue this week.
The step aside issue, I think in many ways has, I think KZN have said they'll probably discuss it in the national conference in December. It's a thorny issue, because with step aside and with all the corruption that goes on in South Africa and other problems, if I can get you charged, knowing that you could be a charged person for the next 5 years, and then 5 years down the road, the case is dismissed or even withdrawn, it becomes a problem. So the step aside resolution, without it being based on saying we will use the constitution, put you through a disciplinary of the ANC, and actually find you guilty or innocent, to the extent that it waits for the courts, it is a very disturbing and unfair rule that the ANC has imposed itself, and it is being used to eliminate political contenders. Therefore, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma is on the money there, but they will only resolve it in December. But I think it was a mistake to introduce that rule.
But there must have been some thinking behind it. We've got voters who need to be convinced that this party is cleansing itself, this party is reformatting. Could that have been the overriding thinking? And if that is the case, if this step-aside rule disappears, could that affect the party's fortunes at the next election?
No, I don't think that it will go like that. Remember that actually the step-aside rule is causing more problems than it solves. Just imagine if Ace Magashule or anybody else could have been called to a disciplinary, just like Malema was. Malema was not given any step-aside rule. You get called to the disciplinary committee. You can even get expelled from the ANC through the ordinary disciplinary. It's fast, it's decisive, and it shows. So where the ANC failed over the years since 1990, once they came back into the country, was to enforce the constitution of the ANC on all the members and members of the NEC and the top six. And that is what they need to do, not to be formulating little resolutions here and other rules on the side of the Constitution. They need to enforce the Constitution, and that will be respected by the public.
Going into the National Elective Conference, the ANC has to deal with the tripartite alliance. We've heard the SACP say that they've always been ready. If things don't change course, they might have to think about their course going forward. COSATU booing a representative of the ANC at its own Congress. I don't think we've seen that before. What does all of that mean for the party going forward?
Well, the SACP has tried to contest elections before. The alliance and the members of the ANC broadly, I think that there is a lot of pressure because the ANC needs to get a majority for the gravy train to remain in the station for people to get what they need to get. Now, the leaders in recent times have not been able to sustain the support of the ANC, electoral support, so that people can take their turns on the gravy train. So that is the real bone of contention. There is no SACP or COSATU that is holier than Jesus here. There's nothing like that. The SACP, COSATU, and the ANC have been feasting on the carcass of South Africa, of the national treasury, depleting the economy of South Africa and sucking the blood of the people of South Africa for quite a long time now. It's a parasitic, these are the carnivorous ruling elites, parasitic ruling elites that Vavi was trying to talk about at some point.
Sandile Swana, always great talking to you. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and we appreciate your thoughts. Thank you. That's one of our regular political contributors there, analyst Sandile Swana, speaking about the ANC KwaZulu-Natal region and who they're endorsing for positions in the top 6 at their National Elective Conference, which is due at the end of the year.